Welcome everyone. To Be a Man, we're doing future emergencies. And well, I'll do a quick round robin. Did you like this story?
It was okay.
Okay.
Not so much.
Yeah, it was okay. I'd agree
It
with
was
you.
okay.
All right. Again, I like the I have 55 minutes to not that it's it's not like I get
Change your
paid
mind.
if you like the movie, the story. So when I first started, here's Susan Benjamin. When I first started reading this, what came back to my mind is when in Israel they had to have gas masks. When
Yes, we did.
yes, right. It was
When
during
I-
one of the wars, and it was she's going to be 30, about 31 years ago, because we had friends with a 2-year-old who was old as our 2-year-old, who's now 33. And, she couldn't suck her thumb when she had her gas mask on. And you had to have a safe room, and it had to be taped, and they still have all those things. Merle.
Oh, in 1999, there was a fantastic movie that everyone would like called Yana's Friends. And it was an Israeli movie that won all the awards and all the Israeli Oscars. I think it's called the Ophir Award, Best Actor, Best Movie, Best Actress, all that. And it was about the 1990, it was the Gulf War, what you're describing, but it's a comedy. They take it to the nth degree. They have to wear the mask inside. They have to seal up their windows, expecting poison gas. And there's a love scene that is hysterical where they're wearing the mask while they're making love. So if you can see the movie, you'll forget it. From
What's the name?
Yana's Friends. Yana, Y-A-N-A. It's about Russian immigrants in Tel Aviv during the Gulf War and how they become friends with the people in the building because they have this common bond of wearing the masks. But it was a complete comedy. It was so the opposite of this story.
Yeah.
This story is about future emergencies. They were in the emergency. So
Right.
anyway, I would highly recommend. I think it is in Hebrew, it's called Hachaverim Shel Yana.
Yana.
Donna.
Okay.
So it's so fascinating. Nicole Krauss is so I don't know if she's widely read, but they have many interviews with her and critiques on every little story, which I think says something about Nicole Krauss. I do think she is a beautiful writer. Some of these stories we've liked more than others. But she says about this story, most of the stories were written over the past 8 years, before and after writing my last novel, Forest Dark, which I tried to start and found it too confusing. But after reading some interviews, I may go back and try it again, because I think it's her response to getting divorced. And this one, To Be a Man, is her response of being divorced. I mean, she does take from her own life. Anyway, but Future Emergencies, dates back to 2002. I wrote it just after 9/11, after I finished my first novel, but before it had been published. Writing fiction was almost entirely new to me then, and until I sat down to write that novel a year earlier at 25. She was 25.
Wow.
Now I feel bad. I got nothing. I dedicated myself to poetry. There are many strange things about returning to it all these years later, not at least of all that people in the story are walking around New York in masks, gas masks in this case, but the sense of large-scale catastrophe and fear is the same. Also strange was that in the years since writing it, the young narrator's much older boyfriend had become my own age. The first thing, one of the things I noticed, the narrator has no name.
Exactly. At the end, there's a mention of Katie. And I thought maybe that was her name. Did you
remember
notice
seeing
that there was
No.
somebody called her Katie?
Katie, I didn't see
Yeah.
that. So and I, again, the whole relationship with Victor, who is named continually throughout the story, it is, he, there, it kind of, it shows their relationship, and, I keep thinking of him putting on the mask and frightening her, and those masks are frightening to look
Frightening,
at, and we've
yeah.
seen them in horror films, and also frightening because of what they symbolize, what you're worried about happening. So, and then, of course, for us, when he went to go get all the food, during COVID, when getting groceries was not our usual. Lynn, go ahead.
No, this story focused for me more on, first of all, I thought it had a similar structure to some of her other stories. It's getting a bit repetitious to have a protagonist who can't find herself and is confused and needs to examine her life more and is ambivalent about her relationships. But remember, this is first person and we're getting her point of view. And I'm not sure it's a reliable narrator. You have to be careful of that when you're reading a story. I mean, I wonder what Victor, if the story were told from Victor's point of view, what he would say. Obviously, the two of them are at cross purposes in terms of their values and of the way they see the world. So it's an interesting story in terms of what do you do? How do you pick a mate? I mean, how do you, it seems as if she was in hero worship mode when she met him and idolized him and was dependent on him, and gradually did not like that kind of role that she was in, and needed to find herself, find her own being. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was my take on the story.
Yeah. Well, again, sounds a little bit like her life. I have Evey, Sandy, and then Judy Biederman.
I actually found this story easy, her writing easier to read in this story for some reason than the others. And I started to think, oh, and another one of her stories, I don't know if I'm going to like it. And I did. I don't know that I liked it, but I got into it a little bit more. But what I was struck by for me was just the relevance with us wearing masks now, and when we run into people, how invisible they seem, because so much is in your interactions with people are dependent on the visual, and you just kind of see their eyes and sometimes recognize them, sometimes not, and maybe tone of voice. But I could almost relate to her writing a little bit more just because of what we're going through right now. Fortunately, not gas masks, but just that fear that's there, that undercurrent. So I could relate to that story a little bit more, as well as remembering, and I couldn't remember exactly when it was in terms of what was going on in Israel with the gas masks. So I just found it timely, a little bit more relevant.
Agreed. Okay, Sandy.
Yeah, it's probably not fair, but I don't understand women that live with a man for 5 years. Young women, I don't think the age difference bothered me at all. But I don't know why a young woman would devote 5 years to one man. And I don't know if either of them could really make a commitment. That was one thing that bothered me. And I'm probably judgmental. I'm probably just judgmental about that. The other thing that bothered me was she was talking about leaving him. She felt like telling him she was going to leave him. And then the next scene, it seemed like she was having a baby with him.
Yeah.
And
All of that, I think, was a little disconcerting. And I think everyone on this call, I have this young woman who was dating a man for 5 years. And I think she finally said, okay, what is it? And he said, I can't commit. And she said, bye-bye. And I told my mom the story. She goes, 5 years. You should have said that after 2. And as a lot of this young woman's good friends were looking at it. We were like, let's go. Come on. And so I don't know, maybe it's easier for us to look back and see that. And anyway, all right, Judy.
I want to just say this, and I can't say. Two things. Our former member, some of you may remember him, Lou Golan. Lou is totally deaf, and they had made Aliyah during or before the Gulf War. But he wrote a very funny book. It wasn't funny. It was like the baby who couldn't suck her thumb. Well, Lou was deaf, and with the map, it was really hard to see. And he was very, very isolated. And he wrote a book, and it's probably somewhere in the old Soval library. So, but the other thing was, I thought there was a third character, and that's runners. The people that run in the park, no mask, inhaling the air, whatever. They're prevalent from the very beginning to the end of the story. Right. So I think there's 3 characters, the narrator, Victor, and then these runners, because they really represent freedom without the mask and air that's good to breathe and not filtered and whatnot. So I thought that was a very important piece.
Thanks, Judy. We'll check in with you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very, very fascinating. Merle and then Lynn.
Oh, we learn at the beginning that she's a docent at an art museum, and she seems to have a lot of power there because the person who she spoke to, I'd like to take you to see what you're interested. He says Renoir. She takes them to see these photographers that know nothing. I mean, the 2 photographers, one was just depressing, and the other was very strange, almost freakish photos. And so I think she has a certain amount of power at her job. But when she's with Victor, who was her professor, she doesn't have that power. And there was something he said that I thought was strange. He said, the Middle Ages were more passionate than now. All we want now is conflict resolution. And he thinks that it's more exciting to live when there are extreme conflicts and violent conflicts and extreme contrasts. And he just has some views that are different from hers. And also he talks about the runners, talk about future emergencies. Oh, those people are running now. They're going to have terrible problems in the future. But that is repeated at the end of the story where she is watching runners and praying that her baby has all that wonderful lung power and energy of the runner. So she's really at odds with him about a lot of things, but he was her professor, and that he continues to be her professor as they live together.
Yeah, Lynn.
I think her mind is a big Scrabble game. I think that Scrabble game is very symbolic. They can't communicate in the same language. And honestly, I found a lot of contradiction in this story. The way she sees Victor is, she communicates to us these ideas he has about conflict and violence, and then he makes this wonderful dinner, and he goes grocery shopping, and he's passionate, and then he's too practical, and he's this and he's that. And honestly, I think she's in her mind, she hasn't figured it out. I think she's in not in stasis. She's in her head is confused, to put it mildly.
I so agree with that. Okay, Susan and then Elaine.
The masks. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I go to the grocery store in Illinois, because here in Florida, you know, we don't wear them. But when I'm in Illinois and I look at somebody, I should know. I can't tell who it is if I only see this much. And so it's almost like they're hiding from me.
Yeah.
So here you've got those gas masks. You really can't tell who's behind that mask. And I think what I got from the story is metaphorically, whether she's got the mask on or not, she's hiding behind the mask. She's not showing him how she really feels, who she really is. I was reading along as we all were, and all of a sudden she's pregnant. I mean, I thought, did I miss something? You know, and I wasn't sure if the baby was born or not. I mean, because she talks about being pregnant and then and this life in her. And so I have to say, except for that metaphor of like not showing who you are, I was a little confused by this story.
Okay, Elaine, Ellen, and then Lynn.
Okay, you have to remember that she's a young woman who met him in college, just went along when she got out of college and is living with him. And there are so many young people, not to be judgmental, that don't know what the devil they're doing, okay? They may be 25, 26, but in reality, they're like 15, okay? And I think pregnancy happens. I mean, they were intimate together and he had his life. He was established. She is still floating and is a Dawson, and maybe she can do this or maybe she can do that. And she's a typical young person who hasn't secured her future. And all over it, I mean, maybe your kids are more settled, but my grandchildren, I have one granddaughter who just got married. She was with the guy for 11 years. She graduated high school, was with him in college. We were all waiting for her to get married.
I kept
And
saying
they
to
just-
I know her. I kept saying, Elaine, what's
Right.
happening? What's
Floated
happening? What's
along.
happening?
And they're both well-established, extremely intelligent people who I see sometimes they revert to little children, and they're both 30 years old. So I think that was prevalent in this story, that she's obviously stayed with him for the security or not knowing what else to do.
Yeah. I love all those comments. Ellen and then Lynn. And Joyce.
There are themes in the story, like there are in most of Nicole Krauss's stories. And when I got to the end with the pregnancy, which I agree with Susan that, oh my God, you know, it comes out of nowhere. And yet I have to think that was probably the goal, a part of the goal of the story to begin with. And she just doesn't drop the bomb until in the very end. The difference in their age is significant. She's young and far more impressionable. He knows exactly what he wants. She doesn't. And it's normal, you know, for somebody to be questioning those kinds of things. It's just extremely abrupt that she goes from this spontaneous, passionate sex, you know, in the middle of or right before their dinner, to deciding, oh my God, maybe I want to tell him I want to leave him, and then telling us in the next paragraph that she found herself pregnant, and it, you know, appears that she's going to stay with him. So I don't know. It's a strange way, I think, of unveiling whether this is her own personal story to some extent. We know that she's, you know, been divorced from her husband. All writing, I think, is personal, so there has to be some, you know, personal element there. It was kind of strange.
Agreed. All right, Lynn, Joyce, Alice, Merle.
Another way to look at the story, which often appears in literature, is the head versus the heart. and which one takes more dominance, and really that there has to achieve a balance within a person, that you can't be all heart and you can't be all head. There has to be a merging of the two. The husband, they're not married, right? I don't think they're
No.
married.
No,
The boyfriend, the partner is mostly intellect and the idea person, and she's the heart person. The way in which they interpret life and situations, she's into the compassionate and he's into the practical. So unless there is a balance, though we all have mates or partners that we don't agree with always in terms of ideas. But if there's that extreme, which I think there is in this story, it seems, until she matures, because he treats her like a child. And actually, she feels like a cat, she says, because she's trying to rub against him. And he says, why are you being so affectionate? There's a disconnect here between the two. I am not real optimistic about this relationship. And I guess that's what Nicole Krauss is probably saying, that you need to know yourself before you enter into a relationship. And look at how old people are now when they're committing and getting married. They're going into their 30s and 40s. And this is, I think, a time of exploration, of learning what your values are and what you're looking for. And I think that might be what she's trying to say.
Totally, great points. So I have Joyce, Alice, Merle, then Evey. Joyce?
I don't think she was very good at communicating her feelings. She was all surface with Victor. When she got upset after the Scrabble game, he thought it was because she lost, and it wasn't. She was thinking about the painting. She was thinking all these thoughts, and yet she couldn't communicate them to him. If she was able to talk to him on a true, she's not a dummy. She had these deep intellectual thoughts, but yet she was burying them. So therefore, he was treating her more like a child, more like he was her protector, and he was going to do that. That was his role, and that was the one that he was going to continue to play. And they had established these roles, as everybody does in a relationship, and that was the way it was going to continue. And at the end, I was surprised. They were still almost surprised that they, I guess, were still together and going to raise this baby.
Yeah, I mean, there was at one point, you didn't know what, they're going to break up. Nope, they're having a baby. So, and that's Nicole Krauss. Okay, Alice, Merle, Evey, and then Ellen.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the last 2 pages. I have more questions than answers, but when she starts talking about that she found out she was pregnant, she said, I thought about that day, and that day she's referring to is when they took the walk, which I thought was kind of a night, he was holding on to her, helping her so she wouldn't slip. I thought it was like a nice thing. And then she says, well, she waited a few days to tell him that she was pregnant. So you assume she obviously did tell him, but then after that, she doesn't talk about Victor anymore. She just talks about her feelings about, what it's going to be like to have a baby. What's the baby going to be like? And I don't know. I just thought it was just to me, maybe it was her like questioning whether she should stay in the relationship or not. But it just seemed like, she was thinking of him fondly when she found out she was pregnant. She did tell him eventually. And then she goes off on these, tangents about thinking about, what life is going to be like for this baby. And I don't know. And then the last paragraph, when she's talking about not being able to tell if the person was a man or a woman, I don't know. It seems to go into a different tangent, not so much the personal about having a child. So I don't know. I got very confused at the end of where she was going with all of this.
Yes, agreed. I have Evey, Ellen, and then Susan.
It just kind of reminded me now of, and I don't know people personally, but just heard of anecdotally of couples that just sort of were sheltering in place right now. And then a relationship just kind of evolves without really having the opportunity to check it out because our lives are so sheltered that we don't have the other dimensions that you would hope, would affect you in some way or the other. So I could just see this kind of a relationship happening where just by default, this is where you are and whatever happens, happens. And in terms of all the objective thoughts that you might have just aren't there. So I think then you're more immersed in your own thoughts. So I could really see this as such a present day kind of a situation.
Absolutely. Merle, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I think there was a symmetry to the story where she starts with the gas masks and then she ends with the gas masks.
Yeah.
And it was all a
I agree.
test.
Right.
Okay, but the part about the baby, she says, but it never occurred to me not to keep the baby. And she had been looking to Victor for all her answers previously in the story. But then when she finds out she's having the baby, she says, it was such I thought a very odd response to having a baby. It was a human insistence steadily growing until the day it would finally make its way out into the world to tell us what all this time we had not known, been without, were left wondering. A small being with a clear argument able to predict the future. So it seems like she's shifting her focus from Victor telling her how to live to the baby telling her how to live in the future. So I just thought she still had not formed her own identity yet. And she was just shifting from Victor to the baby. So, but she's
Very
going to do
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
There's a symmetry to the story.
Ellen, and then Susan and Elaine.
Knowing that all this is autobiographical, at least to some extent, we don't know where fiction, fact and fiction start and end. I just Googled, does Nicole Krauss have children? Sasha 4 was born in 2006. There's a Cy spelled C-Y, but there's no birth date. My question, because I didn't look this up, Cy is listed second, so I'm assuming he's the younger, but I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah.
How much older is Jonathan Safran 4 than Nicole? Do you know?
She is, I've been Googling this as we're talking. She's 3 years older.
She's 3 years old. Okay. So the Victor age difference is obviously not her life, but the pregnancy might be. Although
Right.
he was born, not for this was right after 9/11 and this
Right.
baby, at least the Sasha wasn't born until 2006. So I just thought I would share that.
Yeah. Let's see. She has 2 children. Yeah. It doesn't.
Doesn't give Cy's birth date.
No, it doesn't. I'll keep looking.
Okay.
And under Jonathan Safran 4, it only says Sasha. It doesn't say Cy.
Oh, well, it says Cy 4. It's spelled, Cy may want privacy. And maybe he's taken things out of Wikipedia or whatever because there's no information on him.
Right.
Or she. CY could be a she. I'm not
Right.
I don't know.
And I don't. So I'm going to say. Sounds like it. I think it's a son. I'm reading this book, Lady Parts by Deborah Kopeikin, and it's absolutely fascinating. But she is an author, a photojournalist, and there was a Wikipedia troll who kept going into her Wikipedia and taking out all the books she published, all the awards she won and making her invisible. And so, that's the
Wow.
bad,
Yeah.
bad evil side of Wikipedia.
Right.
Okay. So I didn't know about, Susan, then Ellen, did
I'm
you
gonna
go?
move in a little different direction.
Linda,
So
okay.
this passage I thought was fantastic. And I just want to read 2 sentences. The clocks had been turned back a week earlier, and I still hadn't gotten used to the dark coming in so early. I always feel
Oh, yeah,
a little
remember that.
pang of hurt that first day when darkness falls without warning. It's the slight, sickening feeling of being reminded of the reckless authority of time, of losing your bearings in a world whose dimensions you thought you'd learned to live with. So here's a girl who, when the clocks change, when we leave daylight savings time, loses her bearings. I have to tell you, I identify with that. I think it's sort of depressing, isn't it, when we
Yes.
Yes.
daylight savings time? But maybe this whole story is about a girl, a young woman, who's just holding on and trying to find her bearings.
Oh,
And
for
at the
sure.
end,
Yeah.
with the pregnancy, maybe she is beginning to find her bearings. I mean, it's not particularly deep, but as Alice has said, it's pretty confusing. It really is.
But I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Elaine and then Merle.
Okay, I wonder if the gas masks are a metaphor for not seeing each other when they're okay, that they're sort of hiding their feelings. That was a thought I had. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there. And I think when she talks about the baby, it's been a long time since I've been pregnant, but you can be overwhelmed by the thoughts of having a baby. And a lot of men will say, years ago when we had babies, the men were left out of it. They weren't as intricate a part of the process now. And then I remember my daughter saying, "We're pregnant." And I thought, "We're pregnant? Let me tell you, you're pregnant." So I think that they're hiding from each other and living a life. And you just go on, and one year becomes the same as the other.
Merle, then Lynn.
I think she questions the whole genesis of her relationship with Victor because she says he was French and he had no problem with dating students. And I think she's suggesting that there is a problem with dating students.
Well, there is.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
she's sort of part of this thing that she thinks was morally wrong to begin with, and yet she's stuck with it. And I think this raises a tremendous issue in the story about the genesis of a relationship is very important. And the title is also metaphorical. What was the future emergency? That this relationship had a lot of problems that she did not foresee.
Right.
Lynn.
I think we should factor in too that she was raised on a farm and she loves the country and she loves nature. And now she's in the city, and she takes him back to the farm to visit, and he sort of mocks that lifestyle. So I think there are a lot of red flags here. I agree with Merle. When we enter a relationship, we have our masks on, we play certain roles, and we do hide who we really are in order to please the other person. And here was this professor, I think she was flattered that he was paying attention to her and didn't realize how disparate their values were, their morals were, their lifestyles were, their languages were. And it is the future is like the emergency vehicle. Look at all those red lights flashing here. Are you not looking? And I think in that case, for all of us, who, you can't say that now, I've been married for 53 years, but there probably were flashing red lights that I didn't see either. But as we mature, we either accommodate them or we get out of the relationship. So I think the fact that she is thinking about getting out of the relationship might be a good sign. But the baby, I have the feeling she'll probably raise this baby on her own. I have that feeling.
Interesting. Evey.
Yeah, the little bit of searching that I just did said that the two children were by her former husband.
Yeah.
And that she's in then she embarked on a 5-year relationship with an Israeli writer, author, whatever, that she met by interviewing him.
Yeah. The thing that I found poignant is on page 129. I thought about it that day some weeks later when I did one of those home tests and I found out I was pregnant. I did it twice. Okay, I can see the twice, because the first time the pink line showed up in the box, I couldn't believe it, even though I'm never late. For a few days, I didn't tell Victor. I went to work, did the tours with the knowledge that in me something tiny was becoming a kind of human, insistence steadily growing until the day it would finally make its way out into the world to tell us all this time we had not known, been without, were left wondering. You know, my kids, you know, I have a 22-month-old granddaughter. They were so excited about getting pregnant. Now, we have mentioned she and Victor are not married. Obviously, this was unexpected. I do think when these kids wait longer to get married, fertility becomes an issue.
Oh, for sure.
It's, you know, there's a reason you have babies when you're younger, because it's easier. So I just thought it was sad. And that may, who said, you know, that maybe she's going to raise this child on her own, that Victor,
She obviously.
you know, that Victor is, I don't know, not as significant. And maybe I'm comparing it to something, but I just thought that was sad. Joyce, let me unmute you. Wait. Go ahead.
I don't think it's something they discussed. I think it was just a huge surprise. She wasn't expecting it, and therefore, I think maybe she was afraid to tell Victor, because it would have upended his life. I mean, he was happy just going along as he was, and he was babying her. He wasn't, maybe I'm imposing my values, that he wasn't ready to baby an infant.
You may absolutely be right, Lynn.
I have another take here. I just looked on page 114 and I had written in the column this idea of gas masks. You put on gas masks to prevent the toxicity from coming into your environment. I'm wondering if her husband is toxic to her. I mean, he is, if you read on 114, everything she says that's optimistic, he counters with pessimism. I mean, they have two different perspectives on life. And I feel that she is feeling his toxic presence. And that's why she has got her gas mask on.
Welcome, Izzy. This is from an article I found, and she found, you know, she's talking about the gas masks, the large, you know, the catastrophes. Also strange was that in the years since writing this, the young narrator's much older boyfriend had become my own age, which raised another strange feeling, namely, and here I am still at it, this absorbed job, these forever unresolvable questions. So she is still at it. Like many characters in the later stories, the narrator of Future Emergency is poised on the cusp of deciding whether to stay or go, to commit to the shape her relationship requires of her, or leave it, to go and become who knows where, or what. The future emergency of that story is, in all senses, still ongoing.
Oh,
And
for
I
sure.
think that, I think, yeah, those are her words. Alice.
Yeah, to go along with what you just said, Vanessa, and also what Lynn was saying, I just was looking again on the bottom of page 117, and she's reminiscing about before Victor going out with all these young men that are her age. And to me, it seems like she's thinking, well, that was wonderful. And like, really like questioning, why am I staying with him? And then she kind of says, well, he struck me as strong, utterly remarkable. But it seems like she's thinking to herself, well, that's what I thought when I first met him, but I'm not sure this is the right match for me. And when I reread that and then looked at the end again, I think Lynn, you might have said, she's going to raise a child on her own. I don't think she's staying with him.
Yeah.
I think she's on her way out of this relationship.
And I do.
There's some good things about it, but.
All right, Izzy, what do you
Okay,
think?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a doctor's appointment. I just walked in, but I do think she's going to stay with him because the last paragraph says, it says, once on the way there, I passed someone. It was impossible to tell if it was a man or woman with a gas mask on. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. That's just my, I can't stop that from, it's my other phone. Okay. Geez, they're not gonna leave a message. Maybe it was a joke, or maybe the person didn't trust the mayor, or maybe he or she had simply gotten used to wearing it, had grown to like it. In fact, it was reluctant to part with it now and go back to walking around with a naked face exposed to everything. So in that paragraph, it seemed that she had settled her mind that she was going to be staying with Victor because she didn't want to walk around with a naked face exposed to everything. It seemed to me during the book that I read that she was very dependent on Victor for making her feel close and for making her feel comfortable, like she was a little girl. And with Victor, with her arms around him, she felt safe. So this last paragraph, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the rest of the discussion, but this is, I'm sorry, she said when she nestled in his arms, she felt very safe. Okay, so you probably all have opposite opinions, but this is, but at the end, I interpreted, maybe he or she had gotten used to wearing it, had grown to like it, in fact, was reluctant to part with it now and go back to walking around with a naked face exposed to everything. I thought that was like not a parable, you know the word I'm talking about. It's
Metaphor.
It's like a metaphor for what she's going to be doing with Victor.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. I'm sure everybody else thought she was going to leave him or whatever.
Well, we don't know. All right, Lynn.
She got pregnant. I didn't. I'm sorry. Okay.
I think I have said everything that I need to say, Izzy. I think that she has been, has been looking at some, we've talked about their personalities being so diametrically opposed. I think she feels at this point, 5 years down the line, that he's almost toxic to her.
She's pregnant. Yeah.
She's pregnant, but you know what? At the end of the story, someone remarked that she doesn't talk about Victor anymore. She's talking about the baby. So I think she's almost pushed Victor off to the side. I think she's made up her mind. Notice those words: naked face, exposed to everything. The mask is off. This is me. I like those runners running around. I love the farm life. He's an academic. He's mocking everything that I have to, say. He's treating me like a child. He's overprotective. I don't know. I don't see this relationship.
Okay, and I thought the exact opposite. I thought that she was attracted to that young guy, the guy from the Art Institute or whatever, where she was doing the lectures at. She was attracted, but that was all like fantasy. And then when she got back to real life, I mean, to me, it was, it was just all fantasy, meeting this guy with his slender fingers and da-da-da-da. So, and I think, and also she's the one that has this divorce, right? With Jonathan Safire.
Right.
And she always she was the one who wanted the divorce, and she was probably, a lot of her stories have to do with changing their mind at the last minute or finding a new lover or something like that. Because in her other one, it was like she met that guy and she went to bed with him, and then she said something in here that he was grateful, that he seemed grateful when she took her clothes off. She's used that. You said that before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jonathan Safran Foer had an affair, and that's why they got divorced.
But anyway, but she used the same words for young men. I took my clothes off and they were grateful.
Yeah.
She used that last night. Anyway, sorry.
Elaine.
Okay, I disagree with Lynn. I think that she stayed with Victor because it was easy. And she continued to wear, metaphorically, the gas mask. And they've probably been together for 20 years. And sometimes certain people are not strong enough to make the break. And this group is filled with very strong, determined women, but not everyone is strong enough to go out on their own. Maybe she would have left before she found out she was pregnant, but it's not that easy to raise a child on your own. So I'm sorry, Lynn, but I disagree with you.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. And then Merle.
Okay. This woman, our narrator, who has no name until maybe the end, is totally right brain. She sees this person at the museum, Paul, who's the cellist, and she focuses on his hands and how beautiful they are. She's in a totally different sphere. Now, whether she decides to stay for the baby, I can't imagine. She was raised in a farm atmosphere, which is out in nature and free. Unless she has to give up a lot of herself, if she's willing to give up what she values most for this guy, if she loves him enough, do you think she loves him enough?
No, I don't. I don't
think she's a coward? I don't think she's a coward.
I don't think she's a coward either, but I don't think love necessarily enters into this. I think that the gas mask, and that I agree with what you're saying, that she's different and he's different. But how many of people do you know that you say, I can't imagine that they're married and they've been married 20, 30, 40 years and they're totally different. I think some people just adjust, okay? I don't think it's a pretty story. I'm not saying that it's a romantic story. I think it's a practical story.
Okay.
Right.
You're seeing you're seeing more and more marriages after 30, 40 years where people are getting divorced. So they have to stay in an unhappy, and maybe that's what future emergencies mean. If she stays with him, they're going to be future emergencies that she's going to have to cope with and put on her gas mask in order to to protect herself from his toxic personality.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Merle, go ahead.
It's okay. I think when you have a child, you really have to consider what you want for the child, what kind of a home environment. And I keep going back to that quote about Victor says the Middle Ages were more passionate than now. All we want now is conflict resolution. And he prefers the extreme contrasts and violent conflicts. And she seems to prefer order. And order cannot provide that kind of thrilling thing that he wants. I think that they can't stay together if she's going to raise a child, because how could she raise a child in this environment where he wants thrilling conflicts, violent I just don't think.
I agree. Totally agree.
On Wikipedia, they're talking about Nicole Krauss's themes. This evident blurring of the distinction between reality and fiction seems to reflect a rejection of objectivism in favor of sublime relativism, and unites Krauss with the wider gestalt common to her postmodern peers. And you know, I don't understand. I don't know if I understand that whole
Right.
section, but
You
I
gotta think
do
about it.
understand the evident blurring of distinction between reality and fiction, which is what we keep seeing. And you know, we keep looking at her and her life and what is she trying to tell us. And it'll be interesting to go on and read the rest of the book. We're on a break now until February 2nd, and we'll start up again with Amor, which is love. And I hope everybody has a good break. And you know where to find me, and I will try to, I'll send out all the links as soon as I have them, and then you can, you know, watch which way. Yes, Lynn.
I just want to say, I love our conflict resolutions in the short story. Nobody should take this personally. I love the fact that we can disagree. And I think some of the points that are in opposition are valid. And I just love the class. Just want
I
to say
agree
that.
totally.
Me too. I agree. Get all kinds of different
Right.
points of view, and you could, you know, think what you want, but you get something to think about. Always get something to think about after the class. And that's
It's
what I
a
love.
lovely class. I love discussing with you. You know, hopefully one day we'll be back in person. We keep having discussions in the office and Omnicron and it's, you know, every day, but this really works for us. And I love seeing all of you and being able to
Me too.
discuss these books.
Me too.
And be well.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy
Happy New Year,
healthy.
New
everybody.
Year.
Happy,
Bye.
healthy New Year. Bye.
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 Safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.